The first time I saw a human, I thought they would be easy to kill. Commander Vrell of the Kashari Empire stood at the observation deck of the dreadnought Eternal Fang, watching the small blue planet rotate peacefully below. Earth, they called it, a backwater world that had barely achieved faster than light travel 3 decades ago. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons were laughable. Their ships were held together with what the intelligence reports described as, quote, hope and duct tape, end quote. This will be over in a standard cycle, Vrell announced to his bridge crew, his 4 arms gesturing dismissively at the holographic display. The Council demands their surrender. When they refuse, we demonstrate our superiority. Simple, clean, efficient. Sub-Commander Crane, his second in command, clicked her mandibles nervously. Sir, the reconnaissance data shows something unusual about human military installations. They have, well, a lot of them. An excessive amount, really. They are frightened children playing with fire, Vrell replied, his crystalline eyes, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with confidence. The Kashari Empire has conquered 47 systems. This will be number 48. What Vrell did not know, what none of them knew, was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario since the moment they learned they were not alone in the universe. While other species celebrated first contact with joy and wonder, humans had asked one question: what happens when someone decides they want our planet? The ultimatum was sent at dawn, Earth Standard Time. Surrender your world, submit to Kashari authority, or face annihilation. They gave the humans 12 hours to respond. The response came in 11. Captain Jennifer Marks sat in the command center of UHDF, that is United Human Defense Force, Station Olympus, drinking coffee that was definitely against regulations in terms of its caffeine content. She was reading the alien ultimatum for the 3rd time, and with each reading she found it funnier. They want us to surrender, she said to Colonel David Park, who was standing beside her looking at the same message.
Just like that?
No negotiation, no discussion, just hey, you are ours now. Park took a sip from his own coffee mug, which had the words, "Do not talk to me before this is empty," printed on the side. Do they know who they are dealing with? Apparently not, Marks replied, setting down the datapad. Shall we show them? Let us show them. The human response was not what the Kashari expected. Instead of a formal diplomatic message, they received a single video transmission. It showed Captain Marks sitting casually in her chair, still holding that coffee mug, looking directly into the camera with an expression that could only be described as, "You have got to be kidding me." "Dear Kashari Empire," she began, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Thank you for your, generous offer to conquer us. Really, we are super flattered, truly. However, we must respectfully decline. You see, we have this thing called independence that we are pretty attached to. Also, and I cannot stress this enough, we really do not like being threatened." She paused to take a sip of coffee. "Now, you have got about 11 hours and 53 minutes left on your little countdown clock. We suggest you use that time to turn your ships around and leave our system. Because if you do not, well, let us just say you are going to learn why humans do not start wars. We end them, brutally." The transmission ended. On the bridge of the Eternal Fang there was a moment of stunned silence. Then Vrell began to laugh. It was a horrible sound like rocks grinding together in a metal container. Did she just threaten us?" he managed to say between fits of laughter. "They have 12 ships, we have 300. They have orbital defenses that we could destroy with our eyes closed. We have weapons that could crack their planet like an egg." Crane was not laughing. "Sir, perhaps we should analyze their confidence. Species do not usually." "Enough," Vrell snapped. "Prepare the fleet. When their time expires, we attack. I want that arrogant human captain to watch her world burn before we take her into custody. This will be a lesson to any other primitives who think they can defy the Empire." What the Kashari did not see, what their sensors could not detect, was the frantic activity happening across the entire Sol system. Humanity was not panicking, humanity was activating. Lieutenant Marcus Webb sat in the cockpit of his fighter, the Valkyrie 7, running through pre-flight checks for what felt like the 100th time. Around him, in the massive hangar bay of the hidden asteroid base Fortress Prime, 3,000 other pilots were doing the same thing.
"Hey, Webb,"
called out his wingman, Lieutenant Sarah. No, wait, Lieutenant Rachel Stone over the comm system.
"Hey, you think they will actually attack?"
"They will attack," Webb replied, his fingers dancing over the control panel. "These Empire types always do. They think we are weak because we are new to the galactic stage. They think we will fold like every other species they have conquered. And we are not going to fold? Webb grinned inside his helmet. Rachel, we are humans. Folding is not really our thing. Remember what happened when the British tried to tax tea? We threw it in the harbor and started a revolution? Exactly. Now imagine what we do when someone threatens our entire species. The countdown continued. 10 hours, 9 hours, 8 hours. Across Earth, citizens were being evacuated to underground shelters that had been built over the past 30 years. These were not flimsy bunkers. These were self-sufficient cities buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface, capable of sustaining millions of people for years if necessary. Because humans, having studied their own history extensively, knew that the best way to win a war was to make sure you could survive anything your enemy threw at you. In orbit around Mars, the concealed defense platform Wrath of Terra began powering up its main cannon. The weapon was 5 kilometers long and drew power directly from a miniature fusion reactor. It had never been fired at full capacity. Today would be its first test. Around Jupiter, hidden among the swirling storms and radiation belts, sat the Silent Fleet. 200 ships that had been built in secret over the past 2 decades, each one equipped with experimental weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. They had been waiting for this day, hoping it would never come, but prepared nonetheless. On the Eternal Fang, Vrell watched the countdown with growing excitement. 5 minutes, he announced. All ships, prepare to enter firing formation. Target their orbital platforms first, then their cities. I want them to feel despair before they feel oblivion. Bull! The Kashari fleet moved into attack position. 300 warships arranged in a pattern that had crushed dozens of civilizations before. They were confident. They were powerful. They were about to learn a very painful lesson. The timer hit 0. Nothing happened. Vrell frowned. Why have they not attacked? Are they surrendering? Sir, sensors are detecting. Wait. Crane's voice took on an edge of panic. Sir, we are detecting massive power signatures. Multiple locations. They are, oh ancestors, they are everywhere. The space around the Kashari fleet suddenly lit up with weapons. Fire, not from 12 ships, not from 20, from hundreds. The asteroids were not asteroids. The space debris was not debris. The small mining stations were not mining stations. Everything was a weapon. Everything was a trap. Everything was a trap. The first salvo took out 30 Kashari ships before they could raise their shields. The second salvo took out 50 more. The third salvo never came because the human ships were moving, and they were moving fast. Captain Jennifer Marks sat in the command center, no longer holding coffee, now holding a tactical display that showed the battle in real time. All units, execute Plan Thunderstrike. I repeat, execute Plan Thunderstrike. Show them what humanity has been building while they were busy conquering primitives. The Silent Fleet emerged from Jupiter's shadow, weapons hot and shields at maximum. They were not elegant ships. They were not beautiful ships. They were brutal, efficient, and covered in enough firepower to level a continent. They had names like Relentless, Retribution, Vengeance, and ironically, Last Warning. Webb and his squadron launched from Fortress Prime, streaking toward the enemy fleet at speeds that should have been impossible for manned craft. The Gi forces should have killed them. But humans had spent decades developing enhancement technology, genetic modifications, and training regimens that pushed the limits of what their bodies could endure. Because humans understood something fundamental about war, you win by being willing to sacrifice more than your enemy thinks possible. Valkyrie Squadron, engage at will, Webb commanded, his fighter screaming through space toward a Kashari destroyer that was trying desperately to maneuver away from the wall of death approaching it. Remember your training. Hit hard. Hit fast. Do not give them time to think. The dogfight that followed was chaos. Pure, beautiful, terrifying chaos. Human fighters, small and agile, swarmed around massive Kashari warships like angry wasps around a bear. They were supposed to be easy targets. They were supposed to die quickly. Instead, they were everywhere at once, their weapons cutting through shields and armor with precision that spoke of thousands of hours of simulation training. On the Eternal Fang, alarms were screaming. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Shield generators at 40% capacity. Main weapons offline. Vrell stared at the tactical display in disbelief as his mighty unstoppable fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that should not have been able to put up any resistance. How? he whispered. How are they doing this? Crane, now bleeding from a head wound caused by a console explosion, pulled up a data stream. Sure, their technology, it is not primitive. It is different. They have been developing their own path, their own innovations. These weapons, these tactics, we have never encountered anything like them. To have you. A human dreadnought, the UHDF Indomitable, crashed through the Kashari formation like a battering ram, its forward shields absorbing damage that should have destroyed it 10 times over. It fired as it moved, each shot calculated and precise, taking out command centers and weapon emplacements with surgical accuracy. Sir, we are losing, Crane said, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the ship dying around them. We need to retreat. Retreat? Vrell turned to her, his forearms trembling. The Kashari Empire does not retreat. Then the Kashari Empire is about to lose 300 ships and several thousand crew members. Crane snapped back, including us. Look at the display, Commander. We are being slaughtered. Vrell looked. His flagship was down to 30% combat effectiveness. 2/3 of his fleet was either destroyed or crippled, and the humans were not even slowing down. If anything, they were fighting harder, as if the taste of victory was driving them to greater heights of violence. Captain Marks watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Kashari were good fighters. They were experienced. They were well trained, but they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that being new to the galactic community meant being weak. They had not considered that maybe, just maybe, humanity had spent the last 30 years preparing for exactly this scenario with the focused intensity of a species that had almost destroyed itself multiple times throughout its history, and learned from every single mistake. Colonel Park, she said calmly, please transmit the following message to the Kashari commander. Go ahead, Captain. Marks leaned forward, her eyes cold. Commander Vrell of the Kashari Empire, you came to our system with 300 ships and demanded our surrender. You assumed we would be easy prey.
You were wrong.
You are currently losing this battle, at a rate that should embarrass you. So here is our offer. Withdraw now and we let you leave with whatever ships you have left.
Stay, and we will destroy every single vessel in your fleet.
You have 5 minutes to decide. And before you think about calling for reinforcements, know this. We have been tracking your empire's movements for 3 decades. We know where your fleets are. We know where your supply lines run. We know where your homeworld is. And if you force us to take this war beyond our system, we will win that war too. Because humans do not start wars, Commander. We end them. Brutally. 5 minutes. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving Commander Vrell staring at the static-filled screen with all 4 of his hands clenched into fists. Around him, the bridge of the Eternal Fang sparked and smoked from a dozen damaged systems. Abrigas, the Eternal Fang sparked and smoked from a dozen damaged systems. The proud flagship of the Kashari Third Fleet was now little more than a floating wreck, held together by emergency power and sheer stubbornness. Sir, incoming message from Battle Group 7, reported a junior officer whose name Vrell could not remember. Half the crew was dead or injured. Half the name seemed insignificant now. They are requesting permission to retreat. Shield integrity is critical across all remaining vessels. Vrell wanted to refuse. Every fiber of his being, every lesson learned in 40 years of military service, screamed at him to stand and fight. The Kashari Empire did not bow to inferior species. They did not run from primitives who had barely left their own star system. They conquered. They dominated. They won. Except they were not winning. They were dying. Sir, Crane said, her voice cutting through his thoughts like a blade. 4 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. The humans are not bluffing. Look at their formation. They are preparing for a final assault. If we stay, none of us go home. Vrell turned to look at his second in command. Really look at her. Crane had served with him for 15 cycles. She had been there when they conquered the trail system. She had stood beside him when the Vaxxan rebellion was crushed. She had never, not once, advised retreat. The fact that she was doing so now told him everything he needed to know. All ships, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. Withdraw from the system. Maximum burn. Leave the dead. Leave the wreckage. Just get out. The remaining Kashari vessels, barely 90 ships out of the original 300, turned and fled. Their faster-than-light drives charged as quickly as damaged systems would allow, and one by one they vanished into the darkness of space, leaving behind debris fields and the floating corpses of their comrades. In the command center of Station Olympus, Colonel Park let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. They are running. They are learning, Captain Marks corrected, watching the tactical display as the red dots representing enemy ships blinked out one after another. Initiate recovery operations. I want every damaged ship brought in for repairs. I want casualty reports on my desk in 1 hour, and I want a full analysis of their weapons and tactics sent to every defense installation in the system. Should we pursue? Park asked. Marks shook her head. No, we made our point. They came here expecting an easy victory and got their teeth kicked in. Let them go back to their empire and tell everyone what happened. Let them spread the word that humanity is not to be trifled with. You think this is over? Not even close, Marks replied, her expression grim. This was just round 1. The Kashari Empire is not going to take this loss lightly. They will regroup, they will analyze what went wrong, and they will come back with a bigger fleet and a better plan. So what do? Marks smiled, but there was no humor in it. But we do what humans do best, Colonel. We prepare for the next fight, and we make sure the next fight is even more costly for them than this one. Across the Sol system, human forces began the cleanup operation. All damaged fighters limped back to their bases. Wounded ships were tractored into repair docks. Medical teams worked around the clock to save every life they could. The cost of the battle was not insignificant. 317 human pilots had died. 5 ships had been destroyed completely. Another 12 were damaged beyond economical repair. But the Kashari had lost 210 ships. They had lost thousands of crew members. And most importantly, they had lost something that could never be replaced, their aura of invincibility. Lieutenant Marcus Webb guided his fighter into the landing bay of Fortress Prime, his hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. The Valkyrie 7 had taken hits during the battle. Scorched armor plating and a cracked cockpit canopy bore testimony to how close he had come to dying. But he was alive, he was home, and they had won. Valkyrie 7, Tower Control, you are cleared for landing on Pad 12. Medical teams are standing by. Negative on medical, Webb replied, his voice hoarse. I am fine, just tired. Give those teams to someone who actually needs them. Acknowledged, Valkyrie 7, welcome home. As his fighter touched down and the canopy opened, Webb sat for a moment in the cockpit, breathing in the recycled air of the hangar and listening to the sounds of controlled chaos around him. Crew members were running everywhere, directing damaged ships to repair bays, pulling wounded pilots from cockpits, assessing damage and coordinating recovery efforts. Lieutenant Rachel Stone appeared beside his fighter, her helmet under one arm and a grin on her face despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. You made it, old man. Old man? Webb climbed out of the cockpit, his legs unsteady. I am 32. Ancient by fighter pilot standards. Stone shot back. How many kills did you get? Lost count after 8. You? The 7 confirmed. 3 probables. Not bad for our first actual combat engagement against alien invaders. She paused, her grin fading. We lost Thompson, and Kayla, and Marcus, from Beta Squadron. Not you, the other Marcus. Webb nodded slowly, feeling the weight of those names settle on his shoulders. People he had trained with, people he had shared meals with, people who had believed, as he did, that they were fighting for something worth dying for. They did not die for nothing, he said quietly. We won, and because we won today, maybe fewer people have to die tomorrow. You really believe that? I have to, Webb replied. Otherwise, what is the point of any of this? 10,000 light-years away, in the Grand Council chambers of the Kashari homeworld, Emperor Krathan listened to Commander Vrell's report with an expression that could have frozen stars. The Emperor was old, over 200 cycles, and he had ruled the Kashari Empire for more than half of them. In all that time, no military expedition had ever returned in such disgrace. Let me make certain I understand correctly, Krathan said, his voice dangerously calm. You took 300 warships, the pride of our third fleet, to conquer a single primitive planet, and you returned with 90 ships, massive casualties, and your tail between your legs. Vrell stood at attention in the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. Council members, military officials, and nobles all watched to see how the Emperor would respond to this unprecedented failure. The intelligence was incorrect, Your Majesty, Vrell said, keeping his voice steady. The humans are not primitives. They have been preparing for interstellar conflict since the moment they achieved faster-than-light capability. Their technology is different from ours, but no less effective. Their tactics are unconventional but devastatingly efficient, and their willingness to sacrifice for their homeworld is, well, it is something I have never encountered in 40 years of service. Excuses, spat Council Member Threx, a bloated official who had never seen combat but loved to criticize those who had. You were outmaneuvered by newcomers to the galactic stage. This is unacceptable. Then you lead the next assault. Vrell snapped back, his patience finally breaking. You take ships and soldiers and go try to conquer Earth. See how long you last against fighters that move like lightning, weapons that cut through our shields like paper, and a species that treats warfare like it is their favorite sport. Enough, Krathen commanded, his voice cutting through the rising argument. Vrell, you are dismissed from this chamber. We will discuss your future later. For now, I need to consult with my advisors about how to respond to this situation. Vrell saluted and left, his head held high despite the shame burning in his chest. He had failed, but he had also survived, and he had learned something that the Emperor and the Council would need to understand if the Kashari Empire was going to survive its encounter with humanity. You do not conquer humans, you negotiate with them, or you die trying. In the private council chamber, Emperor Krathen dismissed everyone except his most trusted military advisor, General Zelar, a scarred veteran who had fought in more campaigns than most soldiers could imagine. Your assessment? Krathen asked once they were alone. Thaxelar activated a holographic display showing the battle data recovered from the surviving ships. The humans are dangerous, Your Majesty. More dangerous than any species we have encountered in the past century. They are innovative, aggressive, and they have clearly spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. Can we defeat them? Yes, Ryder said slowly. But it would cost us, significantly. We would need to commit at least 1,000 ships, maybe more. We would need to be prepared for casualties in the tens of thousands, and even then victory is not guaranteed. Krathen was silent for a long moment, studying the data. The debris fields, the wreckage of Kashari ships, the cold efficiency with which the humans had dismantled a force that should have crushed them. What do you recommend? Leave them alone, Saralar said bluntly. At least for now. Open diplomatic channels, learn more about them. Understand their capabilities and their intentions. The humans made it clear they do not want to conquer anyone. They simply want to be left alone. Perhaps we should grant them that wish. The Council will see that as weakness. The Council did not watch 200 ships die in less than an hour, Zadlar replied. I did. And I am telling you, Your Majesty, that picking a fight with humanity right now would be the greatest mistake the Kashari Empire has ever made. We have conquered many worlds. We are powerful. But the humans, they have something we do not. What is that? Desperation, tempered by preparation, Sarah said. They know they are newcomers to a hostile galaxy. They know they are surrounded by species that could destroy them. So they have spent every waking moment since first contact preparing to survive. They have turned their entire civilization into a weapon, and that makes them more dangerous than any empire we have ever faced. Krathen nodded slowly, absorbing this assessment. Very well, open diplomatic channels, let us see if the humans are as reasonable as they are deadly. Back on Earth, in a small apartment in New York City, a woman named Dr. Lisa Brennan sat at her kitchen table, drinking tea and watching the news coverage of the battle. She was a xenobiologist, one of the first humans to study alien life forms, and she had been part of the team that analyzed Kashari biology after first contact. Her phone rang. The display showed an encrypted government number. Dr. Brennan, she answered. Doctor, this is Captain Marks from UHDF Command. We need your expertise. The Kashari have opened diplomatic channels. They want to negotiate. Brennan set down her teacup carefully. They attacked us with 300 ships and now they want to talk. We hit them harder than they expected, hurt them badly enough that they are reconsidering their approach. We need someone who understands their psychology to help with negotiations. When do you need me? Yesterday would be preferable, but we will settle for tomorrow morning. Can you be at Station Olympus by 0800 hours? Brennan looked around her apartment at the comfortable life she had built for herself, knowing that once she stepped into this role, everything would change. But then again, everything had already changed the moment the Kashari sent their ultimatum. I will be there, she said. The first diplomatic meeting between the Kashari Empire and humanity took place 3 weeks after the battle. It was held on a neutral space station operated by the Galactic Council, an organization of older, more established species that generally tried to prevent younger species from destroying each other. Usually they failed, but they kept trying. Dr. Brennan sat across the table from Ambassador Kelth, a Kashari diplomat who had spent most of his career negotiating peace treaties after Kashari military victories. This was the first time he had ever negotiated after a Kashari defeat, and he was clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The Empire acknowledges that the initial military action was premature. Kelth began, his translator rendering his clicking speech into smooth English. We did not fully understand the nature of human defensive capabilities. You mean you thought we would be easy to conquer? Brennan replied pleasantly. And you were catastrophically wrong. Kelth's mandibles twitched in what might have been irritation. Diplomatic language would be appreciated, Doctor. Ambassador, my planet was threatened with annihilation 3 weeks ago. Hundreds of my people died defending their homes. So forgive me if I am not feeling particularly diplomatic right now. Brennan leaned forward.
Here is the situation as I see it.
Your empire has 2 choices. Option 1, leave us alone, respect our sovereignty, and we can discuss trade agreements and cultural exchanges like civilized species. Option 2, try to conquer us again, and we will make the first battle look like a minor skirmish. You are threatening the Kashari Empire. No, Brennan said calmly. I am explaining reality. You started a war with humanity. We finished it. If you start another one, we will finish that one too. The question is, how many of your people are you willing to sacrifice before you accept that we are not going away? Kelth was silent for a moment, processing this. The Empire is not accustomed to being spoken to in such a manner. Then the Empire needs to get accustomed to a lot of new things, Brennan replied. The galaxy is changing. Humanity is here, and we are not going to be pushed around. We do not want to conquer anyone. We do not want to build an empire. We just want to exist in peace. But if you, or anyone else, tries to take that peace away from us, we will respond with overwhelming force. That is not a threat. That is a promise. The negotiations continued for 2 more days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Kashari Empire agreed to recognize human sovereignty, establish formal diplomatic relations, and pay reparations for the unprovoked attack. In exchange, humanity agreed not to pursue retaliatory strikes and to share certain non-military technologies. It was not a perfect peace, but it was a beginning. Captain Jennifer Marks stood on the observation deck of Station Olympus 6 months after the battle, looking out at Earth spinning peacefully below. The scars of the conflict were healing. New ships were being built. New pilots were being trained. And most importantly, the rest of the galaxy had gotten the message. Humans were not to be trifled with. Thinking deep thoughts? Colonel Park asked, walking up beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Just reflecting on how close we came to annihilation, Marks replied, accepting one of the cups. If we had not spent the last 30 years preparing, if we had not taken the threat seriously, we would be a conquered species right now. But we did prepare, and we won. We won 1 battle, Marks corrected. The Kashari are not the only aggressive empire out there. There will be others, maybe not next year, maybe not in 10 years, but eventually someone else is going to look at Earth and think, that would be a nice planet to own. And when they do? Marks smiled, that same cold smile she had worn when giving the Kashari their ultimatum. When they do, we will remind them of the same lesson we taught the Kashari. Humans do not start wars, Colonel. We end them. Brutally. Far out in the depths of space, aboard a vessel that did not appear on any scanner or registry, something ancient and powerful watched the recordings of the human-Kashari conflict with great interest. The being that commanded this ship had been observing the galaxy for millennia, watching species rise and fall, witnessing the eternal cycle of conquest and rebellion. But this was different. The humans had shown something rare, something that most species lost as they gained technology and power. They had shown the ability to be both compassionate and ruthlessly efficient. They had offered peace while demonstrating their capacity for war. They had won without gloating, fought without cruelty, and defended themselves without becoming the monsters they fought against. Interesting, the ancient being murmured to itself. Very interesting indeed. Perhaps this species will be the one. Perhaps they will be the ones who finally break the cycle. It marked humanity in its vast database, flagging them for continued observation. Then it turned its ship toward another section of the galaxy, where other dramas were unfolding, where other species were making their mark on the universe. But it would be watching humanity. Always watching, always watching. Live view. Because in a galaxy full of empires built on conquest and dominance, a species that fought only when necessary and offered peace whenever possible was something worth paying attention to. On Earth, in a small town in Colorado, a young girl named Amy Torres looked up at the night sky through her telescope, studying the stars with the wonder that only a 10-year-old could muster. Her father, a pilot who had fought in the battle against the Kashari, stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "Dad," she asked, "are there really aliens out there?" "Yes, sweetheart. Lots of them." "Are they scary?" Captain Torres thought about the battle, about the friends he had lost, about the moment when his fighter had been hit and he thought he was going to die. Then he thought about the peace that had followed, about the diplomatic channels that were opening, about the possibility of a future where his daughter could explore the stars without fear. "Some of them are scary," he said, honestly, "but we do not have to be afraid of them. Do you know why?" "What day why?" "Because we are humans, and humans do not give up. We do not surrender. When someone threatens us, we stand up and fight back, and when the fighting is done, we offer peace. That is who we are. That is what makes us strong." Amy looked up at the stars with new eyes, seeing not just distant lights but possibilities, worlds to explore, species to meet, adventures to be had. And if any of those species tried to hurt her world, well, they would learn the same lesson the Kashari had learned. Humans do not start wars, they end them, brutally. But they always offer peace first.